Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Metaphysics Mike. Yes, the GOAT himself. So he commented on my video, and I'm not going to lie, it was a mass of confusion as I replied to him, and he seems fairly confident that it isn't. And yes, this is the same guy who, put it up on the screen, split the first half of a conditional into premises and the consequent into conclusion, and didn't affirm he didn't affirm the antecedent, and he called that a valid argument. So this is this guy who doesn't know what an argument is. Okay, well, apparently he's taken to logic now a little bit, Mr. Metaphysics, and he wrote a pretty long comment on my video, so I'll just read it out, or we'll go through it piece by piece. First, he says, calling Leibniz law SOL isn't a dunk. Putting aside you're technically referring to the identity of indiscernibles, first-order logic already has classical identity and substitutability. You don't need SOL for Leibniz law in the sense used in ordinary reasoning. That's a fact. All right. Wow. What a sentence. So when he says calling Leibniz law SOL isn't a dunk, I think he's saying Leibniz's law is only expressible in SOL isn't a dunk. If you listen to the video, the reason I brought that up was because people were saying reflexivity doesn't make sense with relativizing identity, and that you need the all properties for reflexivity. And my point was that you have reflexivity in FOL, so it makes no sense to say that about something that's quantifying over properties themselves, because that's not expressible in FOL. Well, that's why I brought it up. I don't know why he said it's not a dunk. I get in the context of the conversation, I guess it is a dunk there, if you understood what I just said. He says, putting aside you're technically referring to the identity of indiscernibles, first order logic already has classical identity and substitutivity. Well, I'm not sure what that means there. First order logic has classical identity. What does that mean? Is it just referring to primitive identity? Because classical identity, if he's referring to absolute identity, no, it doesn't have that. That's why it's primitive. It's undefined. Okay. Whatever that means, please comment again, Mike, and tell us what that means. He says you don't need SOL for Leibniz law in the sense used in ordinary reasoning. This is the funniest part. He says in ordinary reasoning, because he's conflating the indiscernibles of identity in its axiom schema form, which is expressible in FOL, with the SOL interpretation, which is the one that Leibniz originally intended, where he says for all properties, X and Y are identical, then they share all the same properties. Right? The axiom schema is not saying that. The axiom schema is saying X equals Y, then for function X is... That's only for any expressible language, right? That's language relative. So it doesn't get you to any specific properties yet, because the properties can be restricted. A language cannot have certain properties, which would completely eliminate them. That's why it's not expressible. And that's why it's ridiculous for you, Mike, to say that that's ordinary reasoning. An axiom schema? You think random people are walking around knowing what function means, knowing what a well-formed formula is, knowing what it means to restrict predicates according to a language, right? Because the axiom schema doesn't tell you that if two things are identical, they share all the same properties. It doesn't tell you that. So I don't know why you're implying that here. Here he says, in the next part, he says, I mean, which part of first order identity do you deny exactly? Substitutability, transitivity? If not, why say Leibniz law only exists in the second order? Here he's equivocating, right? Because Leibniz law as an axiom schema is just substitution. It's just substitutability. But substitutability doesn't tell you for all properties because it's not telling you what's being substituted. So when you say why Leibniz law only exists in the second order, we're saying that because we're saying all properties are able to be substituted. All properties. That's why we bring up the second order. He says your counter literally doesn't change, that if God is an identity claim, you still collapse Father and Son under FOL just the same. On the other hand, if is God is a predicate and remains unique, you collapse again because both share the one divine property. I mean, unless you're willing to accept some kind of functional modalism or you drop the uniqueness, this is just nothing burger. This is, I don't even know why he said this. The point is that an FOL identity is primitive, right? You can't define it. But as you start going into higher order logics, you can. I don't know why he's bringing up FOL. Let's say it's true that the Trinity is not expressible in FOL. That can be true according to the axiom schema, right? That there's some set of formulas, if you just restrict it to FOL, that you're going to make it such that the Father is not God or something or whatever. You can make it such that the Father is God according to the schema, right? Because you can create a set of formulas that do that, just like the formulas are producible in SOL. So the point is not that we can fully express the Trinity in FOL. I mean, that's not the point. The point is that when you say it's not expressible in FOL, whether that's true or not, let's just say it is true, is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. There are things that are going to be expressible according to a language. Maybe the language of FOL is not expressible in there. Who cares? Okay? He says, I don't think you're that clear. And that could just be me missing some context. But if I'm to apply this to the Trinity, you're basically making God some kind of sortal relative, which isn't how the term, or better yet, God's name functions in Scripture. Quite ridiculous to even be retrojecting later philosophical conventions into the New Testament with writer's ethos to begin with. Wow, this is the worst part of his comment. Does this guy not know that Leibniz law was created in, what was it, the 17th century? Didn't Leibniz live in like the 1620s? So he's talking about retrojecting philosophy. He doesn't know that formal logic was created in the 20th century. The whole for all properties, the whole axiom schema, all of that axiom schemas didn't even exist until the 20th century. So what is this guy talking about retrojecting? Talking about retrojecting philosophical conventions into the New Testament. And then he says that the New Testament teaches against relative identity. So the New Testament, I'm assuming he's implying that the New Testament is teaching Leibniz's law or some form of identity. Please, Metaphysics Mike, teach us where the New Testament has some well-formed formula in it. Please. Because I mean, maybe you've read something in the Bible that I have. Maybe there's a section on logic in the Bible. If God is a sortal, why would that be taught in the New Testament? Why would that be taught in any ordinary language when it's a formal language? It's a formalization. Wow. Okay, Mike. Well, said I would clear up the confusion. Hopefully that cleared up a lot. If you want to talk, we can talk live. Don't mind. But please stop chat GPTing stuff, Mike.